Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be talking about landlords and we're going to be talking about rental income because they seem to have fallen into or onto the radar for Rachel Reed's consideration in the bid to fill the public finances black hole of 40 billion pounds. So, this video is going to be for you if you are a landlord generating a rental income, or if you know someone who is a landlord generating a rental income, please do share this video with them. What we're going to do, as usual, is we're going to go through the article where this has come from, and we're then going to do a visual explanation of how things currently work at this point in time if you're a landlord generating an income and how that works from a tax point of view in case you're not aware. And then I'm going to hand over to you in the comment section. I'm going to ask you to comment and we'll have a conversation in there. But before we get started, this right here is a breakdown of who is subscribed and isn't subscribed from those of you who watch the channel. I appreciate you being here, but I'd love to have you as a subscriber. So if you do get value from what we're talking about today, you think great information, I really learned something, then please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell so you get notified when I next make a video. So far, so good. Every time I've asked, there have been quite a few of you who have been like, okay, we'll follow along the journey, and I appreciate you. Welcome, but we're trying to grow the channel as well, so much appreciated. Let's just jump straight into it. So, the article that we're referencing today is from the Times, actually. It says here landlords could face national insurance on rental income in budget. Now, interestingly, there is a phrase that's being thrown around which in itself is a little controversial. Here it is. The Treasury is considering a tax increase for landlords in an attempt to boost revenue by targeting unearned income in Rachel Reeves' budget. Now, that phrase, unearned income, that isn't necessarily true because if you're a landlord, I'm sure you will agree in the fact that whilst you may not necessarily be going out to a 9 to 5 to generate that income, some of you will be, there is actually a cost in having a property. So this idea of unearned income means that you're doing no work for it. And the truth is, actually, you are. You've got to manage tenants, you've got to do with repairs, you've got to do with maintenance, all kinds of things. So it's not like it's just sat there, you do absolutely nothing for that money. It's not as though you're not working for it. So the idea of it being unearned income is a little, I guess, disingenuous, I want to say. And I'm not sure if that is the right word. You tell me if that is the right word or how you would describe it in the comment section down below. But it doesn't feel like an apt description of what rental income essentially is. I mean, you're either doing the work yourself, so managing tenancy agreement, doing all the work yourself, or you're paying someone. So it comes at a cost for you to generate that income. And I think we need to be very, very clear on that. But here's the thing, though, right? Officials are examining proposals for applying national insurance to rental income in the hopes of raising £2 billion. It also says here officials are drawing up options for tax increases in an attempt to avoid breaking the red line set by Reeves before the general election not to put up VAT, income tax, and national insurance. Now, this is curious, right? Because in a previous video, and I've done this since last year now, in previous videos, I've pointed out that when you look at where the government's revenue comes from in terms of taxation, the largest contributors of tax are income tax, national insurance, and VAT. Those three account for about 52% of the total tax take in terms of government revenue. I think income tax and national insurance specifically is 42%. So it's a large amount. So when Labour and Keir Starmer and Reeves said that they weren't going to touch these three taxes last year in the manifesto, they were backing themselves into a corner. And everything that they're trying to do in terms of plugging this £40 billion black hole is counterproductive because they can't really go after the biggest pot of money because of the promise that they've made. Now, obviously, what they're looking to do here is to put this on landlords. But as you've already mentioned, unearned income would imply that you're not a working person. are landlords working people? Because again, this is another phrase, another term that's been thrown around in this conversation that we still have no clarity on. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Now, later on in the article right here, let's read this. Labour insiders said that property income was a significant potential extra source of funds, and landlords were seen as a way of targeting unearned revenue. Again, throwing around that term, unearned revenues. Official figures show that there was 27 billion of net property income in 2022-2023, the latest year for which the statistics are available. An extra levy of 8% would have generated 2.18 billion pounds. So, as usual, as you would expect, what they're basically doing is they're looking at, okay, we understand and we know from the data where tax is being paid and where tax is not being paid. And they're looking for what might be the quickest win, the lowest hanging fruit to generate more income. And that means that in some way, shape, or form, a working person, working people will have to pay for this in some way, shape, or form, all the whilst they're skipping around the biggest three pots of income for the government for their tax take: income tax, national insurance, and VAT. Although they are technically breaking the manifesto promise because they are going to increase, if they do this, national insurance contributions, but they get out clauses whether you're a working person. Interesting, right? So this is full of discussion. Now, me personally, I think they're only going to make things worse because I think, as always with anything, if you increase the cost of something to someone who owns something, that cost is going to be passed on, just like it would be in business. You see any business cost increase, it eventually gets passed down to their customer. And that's what I think is going to happen in this instance. Now, this part of the article is actually very interesting as well. There were 2.2 million people who recorded receiving income from property, and separate findings from the English Housing Survey show that nearly 1 in 5 people, 19%, rent their home from a private landlord. Now, private landlords have got a lot of stick over the course of years. Some not maintaining their properties, providing really poor standards of living, so on and so forth. You could argue that that's not all landlords, and it's a shame to see that landlords generally get tarred with the same brush to a certain extent. But they're aware of this shift, the fact that we do have a lot of private landlords in the country. Now, the alternative to that is that you have corporations own property, which isn't necessarily a good thing either. Now, the real question to ask here is that if you're a landlord, what do you actually do? And how does this actually work in practice? Now, they banded around a figure of 8%. Will it actually be an additional 8% that you have to pay on your rental income under the guise of national insurance? We don't know that just yet. We don't know. We don't have that detail just yet. But this is what I do want to ascribe, right? Because I am a landlord myself. So let me just explain. Let's just go onto this screen right here, how it currently works. And this is where landlords will get a little bit upset, because previously what would happen with your rental income was, let's just say you had rental income on a property of, say, £1,000 a month, right? This is previously, this has changed. And let's just say your mortgage was, say, £400 per month. What would happen before was you would have a profit of £600, and this is what would be taxed. That went away. So now how it works is you can no longer offset your mortgage costs from your mortgage, from your rent, from your rental income, right? So now this is gone. You now pay tax on the full £1,000 at your nominal rate of tax. So whether that be 20%, 40%, or if you're higher, 60%. That's the state of play currently for landlords at this point in time. So, with this now being the case, they're now considering adding an additional national insurance contribution tax or national insurance tax to it, which could be up to 8%. We don't know just yet. And what this is going to do is, by the time, if you're a landlord, let me just change the color here. If you're a landlord, this is going to put a lot of people into the red, because your profitability on a property is heavily dependent on your mortgage payment. And where interest rates have gone up recently, a lot of landlords have remortgaged and they have had to pay more on their mortgage, which has reduced whatever margin they had in their profit, right? So if prior, yes, you had £1,000 per month, right? Do a K there. I don't know why I've just done that, but you get what I mean. You've got £1,000 per month. Just make sure that's a 1, not a 7, so you're not confused, right? And let's just say previously, like in that example, your profit was £600 because your mortgage was £400 per month, okay? Then that's great, right? Because at least on paper, you're making £600 a month. With interest rates having gone up over the last, few years or so because of inflation, and they're still high, higher than they were prior, you know, a lot of landlords would have remortgaged, and their mortgage costs have gone from £400 to £600, which means that your £600 margin has been reduced by 200 quid to £400. Now, under the current rules, you still have to pay tax on the 6 and the 400 quid currently, but if your mortgage costs have increased, then yes, you've got less profit, but you're also paying tax on that. Now they're going to levy a national insurance contribution or national insurance tax on top of that as well. This is going to squeeze landlords quite extensively. Now, I can also see people in the comment section who will say, well, actually, well, who cares, right? If you are lucky enough to own a property that you've got a tenant in, you should be thankful. And I can agree with that sentiment to a certain extent. 100%, I can agree to that to a certain extent. But we have been in a situation where a lot of people have thrived to own property. We have this debate all the time when it comes to retirement, right? When you come to retirement, how are you going to generate an income? Unfortunately, because of the distrust that people have in the pension system and financial advisors in the UK, a lot of people have sunk a lot of money into property, and that is their retirement vehicle. These are the very same people who are going to be targeted by this, who are going to be impacted by this, and this will impact rental incomes. Now, when I said that it will just make things worse, as a landlord, what would you do? If you found out that you had to pay an additional, I don't know, £200 in tax, what are you going to do? You're likely going to increase the rent, which makes things even worse for the people that this is supposed to protect, right? Which will be working people, working class people. They don't want to increase income tax, national insurance contributions, or VAT on working people, but they go and do something like this. They consider something like this that will indirectly impact the people that they're trying to protect. And so this is where you start to ask questions. Are we completely getting this wrong? Are we thinking about this incorrectly? I think, and again, I don't want to make this partisan or political in any way, shape, or form, but you have to start asking the question of, are you going about this the wrong way, in the fact that the easiest and the best way that you could take to raise money to fill this black hole, if you had an honest conversation in the election, and I was here on YouTube talking about how they were not having the honest conversation, because even people at the IFS, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, were saying they are ignoring the tax question. And Rishi at that point was saying taxes are gonna have to go up. Nobody believed it. They promised they weren't going to raise taxes on working people, but this is all going to be an indirect tax increase on working people, whether it be council tax. There are so many ways in which you can pay more money, but they've ignored and they've completely redlined the three biggest pots of money to generate enough money, perhaps, to recover some money. I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I find this absolutely fascinating. But if you're a landlord, what are your thoughts on this? If you're not a landlord, you're a tenant, also give me your views as well, because I'll be interested to know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.